Hello and welcome to Ivory Blush Roses. My name is Lisa and today we're going to stitch the second to last seam on the Crazy Quilt Christmas tree. I can't wait to get this project finished, so let's get stitching. Let's pick this next seam. One of these needs a seam that moves along it. If I do one this way, then we have this parallel, so maybe we need to keep the moving one here. So let's see what we want to do here. I don't want something huge. I love this one, but it's just too big for this project. I'm looking for something that I can turn into something kind of starry. Which one were we looking at here? This one. And I don't think I want to do that one now that I've thought about it a little bit more. But you know what? What about feather stitch like this? Those might be too big. This one could be fun. Actually, I really like that one. It's kind of got a mistletoe. We're kind of doing tree there though. So this one or that one. I like the way that this one pulls off to the side. So it really spreads off of the seam. Where this one's a little tighter. We could also do more beads coming off of that as well. I think this is the one that's just sticking with me. So either way, we'll stitch the feather stitch. I need to decide what thread to use here. So this one was actually a variegated. I think that was this variegated. And that was a really pretty one, the way it went from light to dark. We're going to need to put some Lazy Daisy leaves. We could do that in that white and then the little white beads on it. Or do we do the stitch in white and the leaves in this, which would make it different from this one, and then the little white beads. It's always those decisions, isn't it? And we just used this one right here, so I don't necessarily want to use that one. That ball of cat hair. My gosh, I gotta take the lint roller to that one. My gosh. When Mushu gets in here, balls of thread look like kitty toys. So that one is a darker one, but not bright like that. It shows up okay. It's not gonna be super vivid. And then little leaves. Let's do this one. I think I could do either one. We could do our little leaves in that. Let's just stitch our feather stitch. Let's start with that. Gotta start somewhere. So this is just a regular old feather stitch. We're going to do a sampler project in the coming year where we're doing basic seams, but regular feather stitch, which kind of alternates side to side. You make the V so that one leg is on one side and then the other side and bottom are on the opposite side. So let's do this. So I'm going to do this scoop stitching style. And remember to always come over your thread. And see, that one I pulled a little too tight there. Let's get that down. This is not the most even stitching here. I'm too busy talking and not paying attention. So we're just stitching those little V's side to side, trying to keep them somewhat even. And the way I tend to stitch, the tops are even and these lines are parallel. And I've done this so much I realize that I stitch it that way without even thinking about it. It's just ingrained, so practice. Just keep doing it. I've stitched this so many times, this particular seam. Put a few pictures up here for you to see. So many projects. I think we're going to go ahead and end it right there rather than running into this other seam. And you just have to play it by ear what works best for you. So there's that. So do we want our little stitches there? I almost wonder if the white is going to be too glaring in there. What if we came back with this lighter one that varies? Let's do that. I don't want to use the sage again since I just used it on the seam right above it. And we got quite a few of those to make, so give myself a decent length of thread. For this one, with Lazy Daisy, since the stitch begins at the bottom and ends at the top, to conserve thread a little bit, I'm going to start down here. And so we're making a Lazy Daisy on either side of the outside spokes here. I can tell I'm getting used to stitching on the frame because I'm starting to stab stitch more things than I used to. It just depends on the direction I'm stitching on some of this. And we're just going to go side to side, and that will mean when we get to the top, that part of our seam is done. And so I'm making these about the length of those little legs on the feather stitch. But because they're coming out at an angle, they look a little bit shorter. I don't want them to twist, so I'm trying to make sure my loops are straight. Just move right along. And I know when I'm working side to side like this, one direction is always easier to stitch than the other. And so I have a harder time on this side because I can't scoop stitch as easily. So I find I tend to fiddle a bit more with my thread, trying to make everything work out. Again, don't pull them too tight. You don't want to pop that end down, especially on these thick fabrics. You want to be able to see the whole leaf. We don't want part of it buried in the fabric. That's a nice variation in this thread. I'm really liking that. I think that's one of my favorite things about the Valdani threads is they just have wonderful variegations. And they're not so far apart that you can't see them in a short seam. Remember where I'm stitching. See, I pulled that one too tight. That's better. So if you loosen it up right away, you can loosen it up. But if you go on to another stitch, then they're pretty well locked in. And by having the variegation in the thread here with that lighter section, it actually makes the rest of those leaves more visible. Because once your eye has seen them in the lighter area here, then it helps your brain see the ones that are darker. Oh, I'm so excited to be getting these done. I really wanted to finish this, and I see I just pulled that too tight. Let's pull that out a little bit. I really wanted to get this done last year, and just, life happens. Just never was able to quite make it work. So I'm really glad that this year I can do that. I'm not sure where I'm going to put it in my home yet, though. We'll see. And so I was thinking we were going to pull white beads off of here, but I'm actually wondering if we could throw in a little green one as well. So maybe on the very tip, we'll play with that here in a moment. All of a sudden that was more fabric than was comfortable holding in my hand, so switch sides. I will say I love stitching on wool. It just feels nice, and it's an easy stitch. You don't struggle to get through the fabric. Let's see if I can make one more out of that thread. Can I do one more? My preference is, if I can, this is going to be tight, to make each pair of leaves the same, and then the variegation won't be quite as noticeable, but I'm going to have a tough time making my knot here. We're going to thread backwards and thread it right off that needle. I'm going to pull that loop and then pull my thread through one more time. And leave a little tail. All right, let's get another piece of that. Now this time, since I just ended with this end, the other end of this thread, that's the thread that I want to knot, because I want to keep that variegation going as much as possible. Now, I don't need a huge amount of thread there, but see, I was going to knot that. That's my habit. When you're doing the opposite direction of thread, sometimes it'll tangle just a little bit more. So just take your time, pay attention. Now I'm stitching upside down, but that's all right. Oh, see, and that twisted, so I'm going to go back through that loop and turn it so that it doesn't twist. When you have one twisted in the whole group that's not twisted, it's usually much more apparent. And see, I pulled that really tight and it looks like 2 straight stitches. So I've got to pull my little ending one up, and that's better. Now it looks like it's round. So there's a pretty thick seam there. Probably would have been better to stab stitch that, but it worked. So even though we're running into this other seam, I'm going to go ahead and put this here, because I think if I don't, it will look strange. Just trying to complete that pattern. And then we have this last. Again, I pulled my little ending stitch down too tight and it caused that lazy daisy to twist. It's not twisted, but pull that back and fix that. And so I think I need to just push that over a little bit, tack it down lightly. That's better. Okay, almost done. And we're just tucking a teeny tiny one in right there to finish that off. All right, so there's that. Let me knot it off. And trim that. All right, so now let's look at these beads again. I'm going to put out a few more of these white beads. I think I want the opaque ones. Need a few more with that. So let me show you what I'm thinking here. So let's get some of these. So the idea is to come off of each one of these legs 2 or 3 beads. I'm thinking about putting the little green one out at the tip. I actually really like that. So when we're sewing on beads this way, they're all individually sewn on because the way they're spaced apart. These are the tiny green ones, and I do have the bigger green ones as well. Do we like the bigger one better? I think the bigger one is better on that seam. I do like that, just a couple and then with the green. So I'm going to put these little ones back. The green ones will go on last. We're going to start with the white ones because these kind of come up from the bottom. I may go up one side and then do the other. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how it goes. I'm thinking about direction on these beads, and I want them to line up in a row. Now these I'm only going to stitch through once. We're just stitching into fabric, and so it sort of sinks down into the fabric. We're just going to keep going up one side and then we'll come down the other. Actually, I wonder if I want them the other direction though. I think I want them going that way. I think it makes them more individually like flowers. Okay, with my beading thread, I don't have that loose end. I can't unthread my needle. So to get this out, I've pulled up the loop on the back and I'm going to run it through just a couple of times, and that kind of makes my hole. And if I hold my needle straight, then I can get it through. And I might need another needle here to loosen that up. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And on the wool, it comes out really nice. And then I'm going to loosen that one up. I see I didn't even need to do that on there. It just depends on your fabric. The tighter your fabric, the more you'll have to play with it and get it through. I don't recommend doing that with embroidery threads, but for beading threads, it works fairly well. Yeah, I can tell already I like that better. Isn't it funny how just one simple little thing can make such a big difference? The other thing with these beads is I want to make sure that I'm not taking too big of a stitch. I want just a tiny stitch, go over a thread or two. And it's also okay if these vary a little bit in angle. So some of them I can bring off a little higher and some I can do a little lower. I'm looking at this realizing I need to have another seam with these little star beads on it. So when we're looking for the one for this vertical here, I need to keep that in mind. Although I just had an idea. What if every now and then, instead of having just the green there, I know it's hard to see those green ones, but we could bring that little green one right off the end and throw that in. I don't want to do it every one. That's actually kind of fun. I like that, so I think we will keep that in mind here as we go. I'm going to go ahead and stitch all these little white ones on. As your thread gets shorter, it's harder to pick up the beads. Can't find the hole. So nice meditative stitching, just stitching on beads and having fun with this Christmas project. I think we're going to stitch on one more bead here, and then I need new thread because I'm going to be too short here. And again, 2 knots. I hope I haven't been stitching all this out of view. So I got my needle threaded up with the new length of beading thread. I have my double knot in it, and I don't want any loop. I'm going to grab my knot there, and I'm just pulling down gently. If you want to condition your thread, this is a good time to do it. Let me see if I can find my thread conditioner. Well, I have a couple of different ones. This one is Thread Heaven. I believe this brand has been discontinued, but there's also another one called Thread Magic. You just pull over it. The idea is it helps keep the thread from tangling. It sort of tightens it up a little bit as you go. It leaves just a tiny little silicone coating on the thread. And while I don't usually use it for embroidery threads, I do use it for my beading thread quite often. But they last a long time. Well, drop that bead right off the needle. That's one of the reasons why the little trays are harder, but a beading mat, they look kind of like a piece of velour blanket, is nicer because they don't roll around quite so much. I'm not going to put one here because I've got a seam coming around and I don't want to mess with that seam. I'm also not going to put one up here because we're running into that other one, but I'm going to come back down here. Now we'll go back down the other side. When that happens, I just pull it up. I just got a little extra twist in my thread there. And I want to make sure I'm looking at that upright. I want to make sure that those beads are coming off at roughly the same angle on both sides. So it's good to take a moment and double check that. See, I got twisted again there. Usually that's because I got this really long length of thread because I don't want to have to rethread before I'm done with this seam, if I can help it. I'm actually almost liking it just the way it is here. Finish and to make a decision on we're adding stars and or green beads. I know when you're putting beads on, this is kind of the slow part of the project since you're stitching each one on individually, and it's easy to think, oh, I'm just going to take a shortcut and try and scoop stitch those. And for my personal purposes, that just has never worked. Like if I scooped that into the next one, then it doesn't sit the bead down into the fabric quite the same way. Alright, I think we're done with the white beads there. I'm going to go ahead and knot this off because even if I add the stars, they're going to be far enough apart that I will probably stitch each one individually, so I won't make it continuous with this thread and knot. Let's see what we want to do. Yeah, we don't have any stars going kind of up this way in this area, and I think that I would like that. I'm thinking we'll put one down here. So about like that. Trying to pick out the nicer ones. Some of these have little ends that are not quite as nice. Yeah, and then we'll go ahead and stick one up there. I think I like that. Can almost move that one down even though it's not the same distance. No, I think it's better up here. But I think we'll dangle it down. And so now let me sew those on and then we'll decide if we want the green beads on this side of them. We're going to start over here, and I am going to tuck them right down to the other beads. And again, a bigger, heavier bead, I do want to stitch it on twice, just for added security. And then not twice. I feel like a broken record saying that. Yeah, there's the other reason for doing 2 knots. I think I totally missed one thread there. So hold it, pull it tight, and then through the next loop and pull it tight. And I'm just going to go up one side and then I'll go down the other because I'm not sure exactly where I want them to line up till I get one side in. Yeah, I have a hard time knotting the thread after I put the silicone. So this one I'm going to drop down ever so slightly. Gotta find that hole. There it is. So this one's going to turn maybe just a little bit more if I can get it to cooperate with me. I don't know, it probably didn't turn any more than the other one. It is what it is. I don't think I can get one sewn on with that and have room to make the knot. So, in the bin, let's get some more thread. Even though I'm almost done with the white thread on this particular seam, I always run my full long length out and knot it because if I don't use it on this one, I'll use it on another one. So again, I'm grabbing my knot, just pulling down the thread. We conditioned that last one, so we probably ought to do this one just for consistency. And I'm just holding my fingers so that it really comes in contact with that. And then I try to rotate my needle over and do it the other side so that the thread is completely coated on both sides. And then run down again. And then let's come up here. Where are we doing this again? Let's start. Yeah, I think that works. Now I know where I'm going. Alright, there's that one. I'm leaving this tiny one for the top one. I mean, they're all tiny, but I want the tiniest one at the top to decide which side is the better side. I think that one. The link to these star buttons is in the description box below. And if you decide to get some of these little stars, keep in mind that they do have kind of a right and a wrong side, and they're also very obviously handmade, and there's some variation between them. So they're not all strictly identical, which if you've been watching me for a while, you know I like that variation. Oops, my skin's a little rough. Caught that thread. I don't remember how many knots I made. I think that's just one. Let's do another one. Okay, that's definitely the correct side. My thread got kind of bunched up, so I had to check the bottom, make sure it was good. Alright, so our stars are on. That's looking cute. I'm happy with that. So let me switch to the green beading thread. Ooh, there's not much on there, so I have some. I'm having a hard time finding the colors now, so I hope I can find more because I use this green all the time. I think green is just such a wonderful neutral. And I'm going to start out here, and like the white ones, I'm going to just keep it going in that same pattern. Thinking we might do the green one ever so slightly closer. And I do think I'm going to do one right off the star. I think it's just going to be that little thing that sort of finishes it off. Or should I have left that off? Now that I have it in there, I don't think I like it. Well, that's why I don't like these little trays. I love these little trays, but I don't like them as well. Get my other needle out to help. So I'm just sort of having a harder time getting this one through. There it is. Alright, and then we got to pull it through on this side as well. Yeah, I think I like it better without. Well, I can see the hole, I can feel the hole, and I can't get the needle through. And I know it goes through because I just took it off of the thread. Yeah, I like that better without the green on that star. So let's knot this because I don't have much room on this anymore. Well, goodness sakes. I feel like I'm all thumbs here all of a sudden. Okay. And I'll get that needle threaded up. More green. Do the same, pull off a nice long stretch of thread here. And get the thread conditioner out for this. There we go. Alright, let's finish this seam up. Just a few more green beads and then we're done with this one. And we can move to the last seam, which I'm really looking forward to. Okay, it's bit of a length to get over to the other side, so I'm going to just catch in on the back side so I don't have loose thread going the whole way across. I think we're coming out somewhere in there, right there. I hope I'm stitching this all in camera. Can't see my needle against that dark green fabric. I think that's the last one. I think that works really well. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. Oh, but I see something I did. Look, see I've got a loop of thread there? The issue with that is that eventually that's going to cause the beads to loosen up. Let's cut this. I'm going to make a knot. And we're going to go tack that down so that it's tight, because otherwise that can pull through to the front. And I don't want that. Try not to do that. So we're just going to pull it out however far. Now, I know I just seemed counterintuitive there, but I needed to know. There, now it's nice and tight so it won't pull through to the front. And again, I'm just making two because I don't want it to slip out and have my knots come undone. That first knot I always know is pretty secure, but I'm never as sure about those second knots with beading thread. I'm pleased with that one. I think that brought down just a nice amount of stuff. I think this ended up being my favorite seam on this entire project. I'm so glad to be nearly done with this, and I can't wait to see it finished. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to watch these videos. I deeply appreciate it. Wishing you a wonderful holiday season, and I'll see you in the next video.